Hello, everybody. Long time no see. I'm so sporadic with this. It's literally not even that bad comparatively, but I have had a little bit of a reading slump, so that kind of snowballs into being a little YouTube slump as well. I'm so sorry, but I'm back. And we have a fun little video today. I'm going to talk about all of my favorite books from each specific genre. And I kind of wanted to give a little bit of my little stats, my little Storygraph stats of how much I read of each genre this year. So we'll go through all that. And then after that, because, you know, I know some people don't like just gabby videos, but I will just gab for a little bit about like end of the year, like beginning of the year, resolutions, any bookish Christmas stuff I got that I really loved. Yeah, so let's get into it. I'm first gonna just read off of my Storygraph like reading wrap up. I'm gonna try to put it like in the corner here. We're learning, okay? I'm a baby booktuber. If I can't figure it out, I'm gonna tell you what's going on. We will see, okay? And also my Storygraph, I didn't put like the last 4 books that I read of the year in, so it only has like the first 100 that I read. It's missing like 4, but I didn't feel like that would mess my stats up enough to like do it. Anyway, so it has my last book at being May Fly. So I finished reading 100 books across 31,000 pages. The first book I read was an Agatha Christie. The last book I read was May Fly. And actually the last book I actually finished was Miss Marple's, the Agatha Christie's Miss Marple stories. I'll probably talk about that a little bit later. But if I'm reading Agatha Christie, it is probably because I'm in a reading slump. Love her, but she is like my safe place for that. My 2024 Storygraph, a mood map of your reading. Lighter books push the line up and darker books pull the line down. That is fascinating. And mine actually, it makes like not quite a bell curve, but lighter books throughout the year. And then once it gets to October, things start getting really dark. And December, it starts getting really dark. And I think also it's going down because I read less books at the beginning and the end of the year as well. That is so fascinating, a mood map. I've never heard of anything like that. You explore the shadows of the human psyche, follow cryptic trails of secrets, and engage in introspective musings. The narratives flowed at a comfortable, engaging tempo. Yeah, and you can see a major drop-off in November. It's like really crazy. The genres I spent the most time with. So horror, thriller, LGBTQIA+, contemporary, and mystery, with nearly 30 horror books. I am who I am. What can I say? The longest book I read was Women Who Run with Wolves. There's no way. That wasn't that long. It says 608 pages, but I'm pretty sure the Shards is longer than that. We'll see. I listened to Women Who Run with Wolves, so that's crazy. The shortest book I read was an audiobook. It was Riding the Bullet by Stephen King. It was 2 hours. The average length of the books I read was 315 pages, and it took me around 5 days to finish each book. That's probably not super accurate just because I don't update my Storygraph super accurately. Like as soon as I'm done with a book pretty much, I'll update my Goodreads, but not so much with Storygraph. I will usually like mass put in a lot at once. Yeah, so those are not going to be accurate. The authors I spent the most time with in 2024 are T. Kingfisher, Agatha Christie, and Stephen King. No shocks. My average, I don't really rate a lot on Storygraph either, but it says my average rating was 3.99. Probably not true. Let's see. Yeah, none of the rating stuff is probably going to be very accurate at all. Yeah, I think that's pretty much all that I would use this for. I explored the works of 75 new authors. 75 new authors, that's crazy! Oh wait, that's not accurate because I didn't use Storygraph before this year. That's funny. That'd be cool though, huh? Or maybe I did. It says I revisited a total of 3 books this year. It thinks I had no DNFs, and that's a lie. I realistically, I probably have like, there's like 3. I will start a book. I'm not weird to like, if I have only read the first 5 pages, that's not technically a DNF to me. If I like have logged it in my Goodreads and then I don't finish it, that's a DNF. Like I don't put it on my Goodreads until I am committed. Okay, so I'm going to tell you my favorite books in each genre in the order of the genre I read the most of and, you know, going down. So the genre I read the most of was horror, and I read 27 horror books. Let's see. So my two top will come as a shock to no one. I've talked about both of them already. But I do have some, actually I have three top, and I do have probably some honorable mentions. Honestly, while we're at it, maybe I'll just scroll through all of these and we'll discuss every damn book I read this year. Let's do it. Might as well while we're here, you know? Probably my favoritist horror book of the year is Hell House by Richard Matheson. Oh my God. I love this book. It's kind of your classic horror story where you've got like 4 people go into a haunted house, and this haunted house is like mythical in how legendary it is for being like twisted. And it does not disappoint, and like their experiences are fascinating. The legend of the house, like what the bad things that happen there that are now haunting it, is interesting, and the way they manifest. I was really afraid at one point because some of the stuff that does happen there is sexual in nature, and that is what is used to be, that it's confronting these characters, and it is a part of the haunting. And I thought that they were kind of trying to demonize that, but I don't think that's the case. And it kind of forces all these characters to like confront that within themselves. It's like sexy horror. Oh my God, I love it so much. And it's just written really well. It's so much fun. I mean, look how happy I am to be talking about it. Seriously, I really probably am going to reread this every year. I'm already excited to reread it, and I'm not a rereader. That was something that I did have a goal for this year that I tried to change, was to reread some of my favorite books. And I only did a couple, but you know, we're working on it. This will get reread, I promise. And highly recommend. Yeah, she's not too bad if you're not a spooky dooky girl, but if you're not a spooky dooky girl, I really don't know what you're doing here. Next is The Shards by Bret Easton Ellis. I have a whole video talking about this with my friend Hash. It is on Or Skinny. It is my LA book review video. You should go watch that. But basically it's about Bret Easton Ellis. It is a fictionalized retelling of his senior year of high school, where him and his best friends at this like 80s prep school in Los Angeles are being stalked by a serial killer. And it is fascinating. That's all I can tell you. It goes from there. My third favorite, I don't have a physical copy of, but it is Head Full of Ghosts by Paul Tremblay. Fascinating. It is told from the perspective of this little girl whose older sister has become possessed, and her family chooses to make a television show out of it, essentially. So like they're in dire straits financially, and they're like, you know, this is kind of crazy. We could televise this. People would love it. And they did. And it is told from the perspective of the little sister watching all this happen. And it's insane. I also want to reread that one. So maybe it is a little bit higher on my list than The Shards, because that sucker was long. But I also just finished it. So maybe that's why I don't care to reread that one as quickly. But anyway, Head Full of Ghosts, also highly recommend. Some other honorable mentions. Let's just scroll through my horror books. I read You've Lost a Lot of Blood. I was not crazy about it. A Certain Hunger was okay. If It Bleeds has a Holly Gibney story in the back of it, and I don't love Holly Gibney. Stolen Tongues by Felix Blackwell was enjoyable, but I had some issues with some of the choices that were made in the story. I Am Legend, I hated that main character, so it made it really hard to like appreciate what was happening, and I love Richard Matheson, so I hate that. How to Sell a Haunted House, it was okay. Pet Sematary was crazy. It was so much better than I expected. The Shards, The Last House on Neela Street was crazy. I do want to read some more by her. I forgot that I recognized her name and saw her on something in the Kindle Unlimited store today, and didn't know where I knew her name from, but now that I know that's where, I will be reading that book. What Moves the Dead by T. Kingfisher. Yes, Yes, the Dunwich Horror, They All Died Screaming. I read a lot of really good books this year. Mayfly, A Lonely Broadcast, Fantastic Land. I don't know if, yeah, this is horror. What even, if Fantastic Land wasn't horror, then like what would be the standard, you know? That was a really fun one. Paradise Rot, I'm literally embarrassed to admit how much I enjoyed it. So I will not be commenting. Yeah, I don't think I'm going to go through all of these for every other one. Maybe it's just because of this one. It's a really long one because obviously it's the one I read the most of. But those are the highlights of horror. And next, it's like horror and then right underneath LGBT. Love. Oh wait, no, it's thriller. Thriller is next. Which also, the way Storygraph marks all of their genres, one book can like fall under like 3 different categories. So that is a possibility. I don't know that I even have a favorite thriller listed. And, oh, I do, okay. But I will say, before I talk about this, that I don't know if I like the thriller genre as a whole. I am very picky about plot twists. They have to happen a very particular way. I need them to be very grounded in the story. I still want them to surprise me. There were a lot of books I read this year that, like, honestly, I might just go through some of the thriller books that are listed here and talk about what I didn't like about the plot twists. And then you guys can tell me in the comments, girl, you just don't like thrillers. So, because, I mean, in theory, I should, right? I love horror, so it makes sense for me to love thrillers. I don't know. I like thriller movies and stuff. And there are some thrillers I really enjoy. I'm very picky. It has to be done in a very particular way for me to like it. So with that being said, my favorite thriller of the year was In My Dreams, I Hold a Knife by, who wrote that? Ashley Winstead. That's what I thought. In My Dreams, I Hold a Knife by Ashley Winstead was actually recommended to me by a college friend, and that's part of why I loved it so much, because it just took me right back to, it is set in a Southern college where this group of friends, I think it goes back and forth. It's been months since I've read this. It goes back and forth between their college days and now they're going to their class reunion. And there is some unsettled business that they're dealing with. And oh my gosh, it's so good. And it also takes place at a college in the South, and I went to a college in the South, obviously, and highly recommend. Go in blind. I went in completely blind, and I had a lot of fun with this. But also, I think it was probably one of the first thrillers I read this year, so I might have been a little bit more forgiving. I don't remember. I might want to reread that one and see exactly how I feel about it. Because also, like, I have forgotten a little bit of the plot points, which maybe is a testament to how much I liked it or not, whatever. Y'all are definitely going to tell me in the comments that I just don't like thrillers. But, okay, let's see. A lot of times a plot twist will feel cheap to me. It feels cheap to me if I could guess it really easily. So, like, The Silent Patient, I was like, well, duh. None of this is grounded in reality. Like, of course I'm going to cast doubt on this character that is supposed to be in a respectable position, and they are clearly like abusing their profession, like in the mental health field, to, you know, just, of course I'm not going to trust that character, you know what I mean? So that is something that feels cheap to me. You Should Have Come Here also felt cheap. I don't like a plot twist that, like, they hit you with something that, like, which Agatha Christie does this sometimes, that there is no way you ever could have known this. And she's not too bad about it. She tries to keep it real, you know? But it's like a clue you didn't actually get, you know? And they're like, actually, she had a twin sister. I hate that. What else? What else would qualify as a, there's also a lot that Storygraph put in the thriller genre that I don't necessarily think I would consider a thriller. But a lot of them that are in here did have some things that, like, bothered me just in the story. I think I didn't have a problem with plot twists in Home Is Where the Bodies Are, but there were some things about the writing that I didn't love. Yeah. And there's a few in here that I I don't know if I would call a thriller. Like A God in the Shed. I don't know that I would call that a thriller. So moving on, LGBT. I cannot believe, because for the longest there, LGBT was my second one, and thriller just kind of won out in the end. Honestly, probably that. LGBT. I read 17 LGBTQIA plus books this year, not even intentionally, honestly. I didn't set out to read a bunch of gay books, but here I am, you know? I did read, let's see, what was our first? What's our winners? We have 2 winners. I have physical copies of them. Pet. This book is about a young girl who is living in this like utopian world where like there are no monsters. There are angels, and the angels are like community members who have stood up in a time before she was born to all of the monsters, which could be physical monsters that you and I are imagining when we use that word, or it could be something like pedophile. But this all happened before she was born, so she sees these angels as like respected community members, but almost like veterans in a way, but she doesn't really know what a monster is. Her mother paints this picture, and her mother paints, like that's her thing. And the young girl bleeds on it, and a monster comes out of it and says, there is a monster here in your world, and we've got to get it out, pretty much. And she's like, but you're a monster. What are you talking about? I think the young girl is trans, if I'm remembering correctly. And there is like a polyamorous, like parental unit that is a kind of a side character. Like a side character, a group of side characters in the book that are like kind of almost adopted aunts and uncles to her. And just when we are writing fiction, I'm gonna cry about this. What the fuck? When we are writing fiction, we have the opportunity to imagine a more true and beautiful world for ourselves and for the people around us. And I can't believe I never read a book like this sooner. I feel like a lot of times, especially in like, honestly, in a lot of the queer books I'm going to talk about, they're imagining really messed up things happening to queer people, and that's already happening. Like, obviously, it's better than it ever has been, and we also have a lot of history to look back on where bad things have been happening to queer people, but we do have the opportunity when we're creating like science fiction books to imagine something really, really cool. And this is the only book I've ever really read that did that. I do think the unnamed midwife, that's kind of what I'm comparing this to, is the unnamed midwife here, because there's a lot of like queer suffering in that book. But also part of that whole trilogy is finding different ways that we can organize our communities and like civilization to prioritize different things, and serve us, and what the queer experience is in all of these different organizations of communities and society. So, but this feels so much more hopeful to me than that, because it's already established, and they're like working to establish that in the Unnamed Midwife. And also it's like a YA book. It just felt so hopeful without even trying to be. Like, it was, the world I'm talking about is a backdrop for this totally different story that's kind of relevant to this whole concept, but they're just really full of hope. I've never read a book that wasn't trying to be like just so full of hope, and it was. So yeah, that was just a really crazy read. I never heard anything about it, and I found it in a little free library. So that was a super magical experience for me. I really feel like this book found me, and that was very magical. My second favorite queer book of the year is, where'd she go? Where'd I put her? Not her. Oh, A Long Way to a Small Angry Planet. I loved this. I also felt like, how to even explain this book? I got nothing, girl. We are a band of misfits on board, like a ragtag band of misfits on board this rocket ship flying through space, and we have like a shared mission, and we all have a different job, and we all come from different backgrounds, and not just like on a like queer, or like not just on like a queer scale, but also on a scale of like planets and like species. Like we're all different kinds of creatures. And it is so fascinating. It is very full of heart. And I don't think I've ever really been like an adventure reader. Like I don't really read adventures. That's not really my thing. But I really loved this. I enjoyed this so much. I really enjoyed like one of the main perspectives that we were getting from this book. So I started the second one, and it's not told from the same perspective, and so I couldn't get into it as eeasily, but I do think I am going to read it this year. I probably will finish this series because I loved this book. The whole time I was reading it, I was like kicking my feet. So let's see if we have any queer honorable mentions. Just because these are fun books to talk about. By The Hidden Culture, History, and Science of Bisexuality by Julia Shaw. I learned so much in that book. One of my favorite things I learned from that book is that the phrase coming out did not originally mean like coming out of the closet. It was like coming out as like a debutante, like at balls and stuff. Used to like at like drag balls, people would come out. That's how they would come out. Like as a debutante. It was so cute. Anyway, Boy Slut by Zachary Zane. That was like very fresh, very fun read. Did not love all of these. Less by Andrew Sean Greer was really good. A lot of heart. That's like the highest compliment I can give a book, is having a lot of heart. Boy Parts is on here. I guess it is queer. I don't think that's like the chief takeaway of that book, but sure, I'll take it. And It Came from the Closet, Queer Reflections on Horror, I believe. Yeah, that one was really good. It was also like, it's a collection of essays, and so it's very all over the place. Like I would love a story, I would hate a story. I would love it, I would hate it. You know, not stories, essays, but you get the gist. Next we have contemporary. I don't really know exactly. I read 16 contemporary. Did I even choose? Yeah, okay. I don't know exactly what qualifies on Storygraph for contemporary, but I chose as my favorite one to talk about Every Bone a Prayer by Ashley Blooms. I cannot talk enough about this book. It follows this young girl living in Appalachia, and she has this like incredibly rich inner world where she can speak essentially with inanimate objects, whether that's like a barn or like a blade of grass or crawfish. And she's doing all of those things. And she has something disrupt this world, something traumatic, and like definitely check your trigger warnings before you read this book, but it fundamentally changed me. It put me more in contact with like my childhood inner world. And it's magical realism as well. I cannot say enough good things about this book. Some people hate it. It is so close to my heart that I cannot take any criticism on it, which is a chief flaw of mine. Yes, I recognize that. But it is so good. It is so good. It breaks my heart. It heals my heart. I will definitely read it again. I actually might read it again like right now. So, oh my God, I love that book. It's a wonder I could make it through that without crying. And I'm moving on so that I don't. Any special, now we're going to talk special honorable mentions in contemporary. Arcadia by Lauren Groff. That was fascinating about this. It literally tells the whole life story of this young man who is growing up on a commune, and what that like communal living was like. Young man was the young man, and also his wife, I think. Yeah. Anyway, like happy places on here. I don't know if I would say Boy Parts probably goes more in contemporary for me by Eliza Clark. I really enjoyed that book. I also felt like it was very relevant. I think a lot of times when books don't want to be dated, you can feel it. And I think they risk a lot when they do that. Like, I think that they think dating their book is a bigger risk than specificity. And I think that specificity is much more valuable. And I feel like the way the queer people were written in that book, maybe that's why it fell in the queer category. There were a lot of queer people in that book, and the way they were written felt very true to the queer people in my life and the queer friendships I have. Mrs. God by Peter Straub is also on Contemporary, which I would consider it horror, but I did really love it. It is really good. And also, for the record, I don't know that I would say that it was my favorite horror book, but I would probably rank it higher in a different category just because I read so much horror, so much good horror, but it wasn't really that scary. I don't feel like. Maybe Mrs. God is a thriller. I clearly don't even understand what like that category is. Like, to me, thriller is like horror light, diet horror, you know? And I'm like, oh, grow up. You're being a wuss. Anyway, mystery. I read 12 mystery books. Oh my gosh. And my favorite one. I have this as a book. I can't find it right now. As a book. I can't find it right now. I assume I lent it out to someone. It's The Secret History by Donna Tartt. Oh, that was a good one. Sorry, Salem. I don't know if you can see her. No, she's going to jump up if I try to show you. So anyway, Secret History by Donna Tartt. Jesus. At this point, I don't think I need to tell you. Sorry, Salem. That was awful for both of us. I don't think I need to tell you what Secret History is about. It's dark academia. The mother of all dark academia. And it was my introduction to dark academia, which was super interesting. And maybe that's why I rated it so highly. But also, like, I like mystery as like filler for me, as you can tell by the way I'm talking about Agatha Christie. It looks like my hair, I did get a haircut, but it looks like the way I only have my bangs forward, it looks like my hair's a lot shorter than it is. Don't want to freak myself out there. Yeah, I have no special honorable mentions in mystery. She's just my filler. There is a literary category on here. I did not write that down, so I'm gonna assume that I didn't have any that I loved, but let's just see. A lot of this literary stuff feels like no comment. And I do love literary fiction, but I don't agree with the way that Storygraph has organized and categorized some of these. So we just won't talk about them. Next we have memoir. I read 11 memoirs this year. What? I've probably read like maybe tops 10 other memoirs in my life. Tops. Maybe six tops. I don't know. But I think also I kind of this year started to figure out like how fun memoirs could be, really. Like Boy Slut by Zachary Zane was such a fun book. I think a lot of times with memoirs, I imagine either like celebrity memoirs, which sometimes can be interesting to me, sometimes they're not. Or I imagine like someone who has just had the hardest life ever, their memoir, which like their stories need to be told, absolutely. But for me, that's not always going to be a book I like gravitate to. That's just not, I'm not always wanting to read like really horrible things happening to someone, and in the back of my mind the whole time I'm like, this really happened. Like, this is someone's story. That's so sad. Yeah, hence the value in like fiction. We can like still have some faith in humanity even when horrible things are happening to people. Let's see. My favorite memoirs. Oh yeah, my favorite memoirs of the year. I have a tie. Do I have a tie? I chose to, but I don't know if I have a tie. First I have Because We Are Bad, OCD, and A Girl Lost in Thought by Lily Bailey. This book put me in someone's head in the way I never have had a book. Well, except for maybe Every Bone a Prayer. I have never had a book do. And it really helped me to understand a different perspective in a way that you might not imagine a book even could. It just tells the story of her life. Me giving a synopsis of a memoir. What? It just tells the story of her life. And then the other book I have is Maybe You Should Talk to Someone by Lori Gottlieb. And it is the story, she's a therapist, and she's telling obviously not violating HIPAA, but she's kind of like amalgamated some of her patients into different characters and telling the story of like how working with these patients impacts her life, and even when what it's like to things you would want to ask a therapist, like do you ever have patients you can't stand and how does that make you feel and how do you work with them, got that kind of thing. She's kind of answering those sorts of questions. Yeah, that was a really good one. I really enjoyed that. It was very insightful, and it also reminds you a lot the power of like showing people grace, and how much you just don't know what people are going through. Honorable mentions in the memoir category: Paris Hilton's memoir. I would not have expected to like it as much as I did. Holly Madison's I also really enjoyed. Educated was really good. Yeah, highly recommend. A good year for memoirs for me. I would not have expected that. Next we have science fiction. I read 11 science fiction books, and my favorite is Player Piano by Kurt Vonnegut, my boy. I saw someone on my plane yesterday was reading a Kurt Vonnegut book. Made me very happy. This is about a man who is an administrator of a plant in a future where almost all jobs aside from like administration, like managers and military versus like janitorial stuff, are all like, what's the word? Jesus Christ. Automated, machinated, like it's all like machines. Jesus. Yes, I do read actually. You would never believe it. But player piano. So basically everything functions like a player piano. The entirety of society is playing itself. There are some exceptions here and there, like bartenders, which is fascinating because I have seen technology try to take over my job as a bartender already. So that's kind of crazy, but fascinating to read today, and upsetting, and really interesting. It is crazy how much he clocked, you know? Okay, honorable mentions. I just realized how this is gonna be a very long video because I'm gonna gab at the end too. So honorable mentions for science fiction is The Unnamed Midwife. I love that whole trilogy. Scythe, obviously. Did I not put that on there? Oh, Scythe is my number one YA. So we'll get there. But yeah, that's it. Those are my main science fiction ones. Next we have classics. Apparently I read 9 classics this year. Don't remember doing that. Oh, a lot of them are like Agatha Christie, and Hell House is considered a classic. I will take it. Hell yeah. Okay. Yeah. Sure. Probably, I guess my top classic would be The Bell Jar. I read that for the first time this year. Loved it. Could not fucking believe it took me this long to read it. Very frustrated with myself that it took me this long to read it, but also I do think my frontal lobe needed to develop before, because the way that some men are with Catcher in the Rye, I would have been about this. Sorry. Anyway, you're welcome. I didn't read it till I was 27. You're welcome, society. Next I have fantasy. I read 8 fantasy books. I'm like, this is all new to me. Oh my gosh, my favorite one was Inkblood Sister Scribe. This book, and I don't know if maybe it was like where I was in my reading journey, but this book felt like reading like a kid again, like reading Harry Potter for the first time. And I guess that's kind of what it was to me. It was like magic, like that type of magical fantasy, but packaged in a way that was like enjoyable for me as an adult woman. Yeah, and a queer woman. Like, it's pretty queer too. So love that book. Other honorable mentions: Babel. Oh my god, that book was crazy. I do feel like it was a little bit overhyped, but I did love it still. I have a lot of trouble with like overhype, which means I should probably turn off the booktube, but you know, whatever. The Familiar by Leigh Bardugo I also really enjoyed. I Historical fantasy, love. Give me more historical magical realism, maybe. Would that be closer to? I don't even know, but I loved it. I also felt like I was learning while I was reading it, which is probably not true, but yeah, let's just stop there. There's a lot more categories on here, but I think we have I've talked about all my faves, those are my like favorite books of each genre for the year, and I've gotten to gush about the ones that I needed to gush about, so now I want to talk a little bit about just like book goals and end of year, like any bookish Christmas gifts and all that jazz. So last year, my book goal, I don't know if I came up with this at like the beginning of the year or if I just popped really a lot. Jeez. Okay, anyway. I don't know if I had any goal like on January 1 last year with books, but eventually my reading goal became 100 books, and I did that. I read 104 books, so I'm gonna leave it the same this year, and just because that was also a really good pace for me, at least at like for the majority of last year. I also feel like part of the reason I've been in a reading slump the past like 3 weeks is because I haven't had as much time on my hands, and I don't know how much that's gonna be the same in the coming year, so I'm going to be flexible with it. We're going to roll with the punches, but I do think it is important for me to have a number that challenges me, because 100 books did challenge me and I did have to stay consistent with it throughout the year, in order to not be like scrambling at the last minute and like trying to read short books, because I really hate that. I want to be consistent with it because it gives me so much emotionally and mentally. It really is something like very much for my mental health that is just for me. And I am super bad about like that being the first thing that falls off the to-do list, the thing that's just for me. So that has to stay. It has been a habit that has like really added a lot to my world this year, and I intend to continue that. I think if I were to add a goal, I would probably want to read a little bit more nonfiction, but I disagree with the take that nonfiction is like inherently you're like learning more or getting more out of reading nonfiction. I think that's dumb. I will fight with you about it. I don't care. Or you haven't read enough books. Are you kidding me? The amount of things I've learned from not nonfiction, I'm sorry. I hate that take. I want to read a little bit more nonfiction, but also a lot of nonfiction to me, it can be very derivative and like, I don't know. They will, like the essay book I read, the 101 essays that will change your life, that are making outrageous claims like, you will never get anywhere without blah, blah, blah. And like which is an outrageous claim. If it is a nonfiction book and you use the word never, I'm gonna give you one of these little eyebrows, and then when you have no evidence afterwards, I'm gonna do one of these. I'm gonna close the book, and then I'm gonna give it one of these and put it back on the shelf, because that's insane. And I feel like a lot of nonfiction books do things like that. I understand you have a point you're trying to make, but like, make it intelligently, yeah? This is a book. And especially the people who read nonfiction books and like think that they are better than fiction books, you didn't, we're not fighting. No one's fighting with me. I'm just talking to the camera right now. So I'm going to stop and we're talking about something else. So I might read a little bit more nonfiction this book, okay? String me up. Maybe I won't. Maybe I need to not do that because of how I'm talking about it. But anyway, what else even is there to talk about anymore? But I'm not going to have any hard and fast reading goals, like have to read so many nonfiction, have to read blah, 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 beyond like my number, just because I have made my vision board. I have specific goals in each like sector of my life, and I potentially might have overdone it. And I do want reading to still be enjoyable for me. I don't want to be like, yeah. You know what all that means. Moving on. This has devolved. Maybe I do need to just talk for an hour before you even start filming so we get the goobers in. Next. I wanted to talk about some bookish gifts I got. My family My aunt and uncle and my cousin, you can't really see it. I'm learning, okay? They got me a book embosser, and I'm still learning how to use it. So this embossing is not my best work, but it's so cutie. It's got a little book with little flowers coming out of it. It has my name on it. Ah! So if I lend you Still Life with Woodpecker, however many, at least 5 people out there are on the planet right now that have copies of Still Life with Woodpecker that I've given to them, keep it. Do keep it. Because I did give it to you as an act of love, but I did maybe one day at least want you to either read it or give it back to me, one of them. You don't have to do both, but Jesus! Yeah, so I can have my books back when I lend them out to people. I'm really excited for that. That was a great gift. Really love. They also gave me a little tea infuser that looks like a little it looks like a little tulip in a pot, like a potter and a planter. And I always need more tea infusers. So thank you. I love that gift. Also, my bestie, my hometown bestie, got me a little book gift thing. She got me this. My weekend's booked, and it smells amazing. And I really wanted candles, but I'm flying with this stuff, so I can't really like have a ton of candles. That would have really made my trip even more enjoyable. Lugging around candles all through the airport. She also got me this book that I've been wanting to read. I opened it and I was like, did you look on my Goodreads? Because it's on my want to read, and I also have not already read it. So she was like, no, I didn't. I couldn't find it. And I was like, girl, this is perfect. This is exactly what I wanted. So I've only read a couple of pages like in the airport, but I love it so far. But yeah, thank you for watching. This has been a huge part of my 2024. I have enjoyed making these videos so much. As you can tell, I just love to gab. I will talk your face down. About books. I'm talking to a wall right now about books. We've been talking for how long? Too long, to a wall about books. So I love this. Anytime somebody comments or anything, it makes me so happy. I feel like I've learned so much. Yeah, it's all going up. Thank you for listening to me gab about books. I love you. Also, if you're like just a family member or a friend of mine that has like stayed in contact with me by like having me on your little screen, even though I'm across the country, that has also like given me so much and made me feel so loved and so supported. So thank you for being here. I love you all so much. I hope you have an incredible 2025, and I hope you had an incredible 2024. Happy New Year.